Welcome back, everyone, to the 2-on-1 Fast Break podcast. I named this podcast. You think I know how to say it by now, but I'm joined again by Dan Erda, our NFL handicapper, currently 68% on the season, doing great work in his department. Dan, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing great. Got another exciting slate of NFL games to talk about today, but first let's take a look back at Week 6 plays that you made. We discussed the Atlanta game. That was part of your Week 6 slate, but we discussed that on last week's podcast, so no need to really delve back into that one. So let's kick it right off with the Thad Lewis game that almost was.
Oh, man. I mean, it still was because I got my money.
That's true. It was a win. You had the Bills at plus 7.5 last week at home against the Bengals. And unfortunately for the Bills, they were able to tie it in regulation, but the Bengals came out on top in overtime. But for your purposes, that worked.
In fact, I just found out the other day there are no Thad Lewis jerseys available on eBay.
Everybody must have bought them.
That's the only reason.
That's the only conclusion I can come to.
But I do have a new. I think Thad Lewis is replacing Tebow as my mystical figure who I blindly worship for no reason.
Irrational confidence QB.
Yes.
That's fair. I mean, he looked good in his lone start last year with Cleveland, and then he had a great performance this past Sunday against Cincinnati, which is a really tough defense. We saw them hold Brady without a touchdown the week prior. And then Thad goes out.
You mean the monsoon held Brady without a touchdown the week prior?
Yeah, for the last 6 minutes of the game. I think Cincy D had something to say about it for the first 54 of that one. And then, Thad had 2 passing touchdowns, added another rushing. He looked good, and that was encouraging for Bills fans because it was just announced that E.J. Manuel is going to be out for an additional 4 to 6 weeks. So looks like they're rolling with Thad for a while unless they want to throw Matt Flynn out there. But
Thad came up gimping at the end of the game, and he said he was day-to-day, but as of right now, it looks like he's going to play on Sunday.
Yeah, so good news for us Thad Lewis fans out there.
But you know what? We're going to talk about this again later because it seems like either whether I'm betting on them or against them, the Bengals end up on my card every week. And I just think I can read this team, and they struggle in games like that. They're on the road, which is on the road again this week, but they're playing a team that you think they should roll over, and they just don't do that when they're supposed to.
Now, the offense has been very inconsistent this season. Dalton did have a pretty good game last week.
Very good game.
Threw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, but we've seen them struggle a lot this season, and it's been typically the defense that carries them. So the defense kind of keeps them in every game, and then it's whether the offense shows up or not that determines whether they're going to come away with the victory. But that was a good win for you. We'll move on to the next game from Week 6, which was the Detroit Lions. You had them at -3 last week, and they covered pretty easily based on what you see on the scoreboard, 31-17 final, but it really wasn't that easy when the game was going on, huh?
Well, first off, I had it at -2.5, because if it was a full 3, I don't even think I would have played it.
Okay. I think it did finish at 3, but you're right, you did get it at 2.5.
And yeah, it looks like a dominating performance by Detroit, but if you can go back and look at the replays, Cleveland was right in that game with 4 minutes to go until possibly the worst play in the history of NFL football occurred. And credit to us. We said that the reason we liked the Lions so much was because Brandon Weeden sucks. And Brandon Weeden sucked.
Did he ever? We talked a little bit, I know you mentioned in one of your columns that you think there's certain QBs that can really step it up with the game on the line. And I disagreed with you, but I think it's safe to say Brandon Weeden would be the exact opposite. He's the guy that's not going to step up with the game on the line. And he might be the guy who, instead of throwing it out of bounds, tries a backhand floater towards the sidelines where there's multiple defenders, which is what happened last week.
You know what's funny? Like, that's actually a topic later. We're going to discuss the Eagles quarterback situation, but that's the kind of thing Michael Vick would do. Sometimes guys have to accept that a play's dead, that it's not going to yield a positive result, and you either got to throw the ball out of bounds, throw it away, or just go down and take the loss instead of just heaving a ball up like that that's more likely to be intercepted than caught by your team.
Yes, situational awareness is just one of those intangible things that won't show up on a stat sheet, but a lot of times a throwaway, which is an incompletion in the books, is probably one of the better plays that QB can make throughout the game sometimes. So another thing from that game, right before we move on, I liked with Fourier, he's scoring all those red zone touchdowns, and he's got those dances going on afterwards. They asked Jim Schwartz in the post game why he's so effective in the red zone, and his answer was, he's tall as hell. That's all he said. So
sometimes it's as simple as that. You know what? It's actually true, because if you watch the touchdowns, it's not like he was making cuts or getting wide open. They were just throwing the ball up to him, and he was getting it.
Yeah, he's a 6'7" guy. They're just throwing him jump balls in the end zone, and he's half a foot taller than the defender, so he's coming down with them. But that was another win for you with Detroit last week. And then finally, the other loss for you last week, aside from the Atlanta game, was the Seattle Seahawks, who you had giving 13.5, and unfortunately, when all was said and done, they only were a 20-13 victor, so they did not cover, although they won the game.
They didn't. We've talked about this a lot on this podcast. It was towards the end of the game. If they wanted to score again, they probably could, but the team doesn't really care about the spread unless you're a college team trying to impress the boosters. But the NFL teams just want to win the game, so they got the turnover late in the game, but didn't try to score. I still would take. I mean, I've been saying this a lot, and I don't want to sound irrationally confident. But this is another play where I would take this. If they played every week, I would take Seattle every single week. If you saw the end of the first half, incredibly fluky play.
Yeah, definitely.
Kicker Stefan Hushika tried to get in on a tackle earlier in the game and ended up getting hurt. So the backup kicker, who's the punter, usually the holder, had to attempt a field goal, and a backup holder had to come in to hold it. And that was almost as disastrous as Brandon Whedon's backhand flip. And it turned out they got not only did they fumble the snap, it was returned for a touchdown. And that was a 10-point swing. In all fairness, Seattle's offense hasn't been clicking the last couple of weeks, so it wasn't the domination I expected. But I still would like them to cover the spread in this game any day. But that's why nobody wins them all.
Yeah, if Hauschka doesn't get injured in that in-game situation, they go into halftime up 10-3. Instead, they're down 10-7 because they got this guy Maragos, who's a safety. They got him as the backup holder, and he bobbled the snap, and then he freaked out, tried to throw the ball up in the air.
Bobble that snap, fine. Just get down on it.
Just get down, yeah. Just make the smart play. Don't do something disastrous like that. So, 10-point swing, which they win by 7, and you needed to be covered by 13.5. Can't really look back in hindsight, but definitely a big play in the scheme of things as far as covering, and not something you can really predict.
Not as bad as if I picked the Houston Texans, though.
No.
At least I can actually see why this game might have covered.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody knows what's going on in Houston. It's really shocking the way not only the offense is struggling, but the defense gave up 20-some points in addition to the defensive touchdowns that the Rams got. But just awful performance by Houston last week.
I know this is never going to happen. Houston offers Philly a 5th-round pick for Vic for the rest of the year. Who says no to that?
I would think that I think the Eagles would say no. Not because it wouldn't be in their benefit to take such a deal, because Vic's obviously a free agent after this year, and 5th-round pick would be nice to get for him. But I just don't know if they're ready to roll the dice with Foles for the entire season yet. I think they still need to see more from him before they can fully commit to him as the starter. And being that they're in first place right now, tied for first, that would kind of like signal a sort of like a white flag as far as we don't really care about this season. We're looking more long term, which I don't think they're ready to do at this point. I think the fan base would kind of be outraged if such a thing happened. As much as they like Foles, say he has one bad game and then Vic's already traded, everybody would be all over management for something like that.
And then it becomes a rebuilding year, and then you're in that top 10 where you could get a top 5 quarter. We could talk. We're going to have a discussion about this very topic later, so we'll put this aside temporarily.
We'll move on to the Week 7 plays for this week. You have 5 plays on the board. And speaking of the Eagles, they're involved in your first play. You like the Eagles-Dallas over at 56. You got it in. Unfortunately for you, that line has since moved down to 54. So lose a couple points with the line movement, but what do you like about this over?
I mean, to make it quite simple, 2 very good offenses and 2 not so good defenses. To go a little bit more in depth, I like the Eagles made Mike Lennon look like an NFL quarterback on Sunday. Even though the Eagles were able to win the game, Mike Lennon will look good. Tim Wright looked like Antonio Gates. He's some scrub tight end who I hadn't even heard of until last Sunday. And I'm thinking if guys like Ruben Randall and Tim Wright and Donnie Avery and Eddie Royal are putting up great games against the Eagles, what's going to happen when a team whose 4th best receiver is Miles Austin comes to town?
Probably a lot of points.
A lot of points for the. I mean, the defense is terrible. They're not going to be running the ball that much because DeMarco Murray's out. So it's just going to be Romo. Romo might top his 510 yards he got a couple weeks ago against Denver. And I'm kind of like, the line is telling you that it's going to be a close game. They have the Eagles as favorites, and I kind of agree. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. So that team's scoring. The Eagles' offense hasn't slowed down for the last 2 weeks. It's going to be scoring.
Yeah, I think we all expect Dallas to be putting up points. The Eagles' defense hasn't stopped anybody all year long, and the Dallas offense is certainly firing on all cylinders right now. Romo looks as good as almost any quarterback in the league. Went toe-to-toe with Peyton Manning, and aside from one solitary mistake towards the end of the game, he matched Manning pass for pass. So definitely a lot of point potential on that side of the ball. I think the big question is, what is your personal referendum on Nick Foles? Is he the guy that we've seen against Tampa Bay this year and also last year, or is he the guy that's lost his other 6 starts as an NFL quarterback?
Yeah, but I mean, can you read those 6 starts? He was on a team that was in complete disarray. I don't think he really had a chance in many of those starts. He was also a 4th-round rookie playing in his first season. He's a little more seasoned now. I have faith in him. Even if the Eagles lose this game, I think at the very least they're going to put up 3 touchdowns and a couple field goals. And I really think Dallas is going to have a really good offensive game. I'll never bet against my home team. I'll never root against my home team. But if I was an objective bettor, I would look really hard at Dallas in this game.
Yeah, I don't see how Dallas is an underdog in this situation. Or not that they're not an underdog, but they're certainly not a worse team than Philadelphia. So
at least
in
right
that
now.
type of situation, I would definitely take the points. But I agree with you as far as Foles is concerned. I think that's just the question that's out there, and it's kind of a put up or shut up situation. So
this is a huge week. If he wins this game and is impressive, it doesn't matter how healthy Vic is. I don't think he's going to play anymore.
I agree. So we're going to talk more about this again.
By the time we get to our conversation, we would have discussed the Vic Foles thing for like 10 minutes already. But
yeah, to foreshadow, we're going to be discussing the Vic Foles situation, and it's been taking over the Philadelphia airwaves lately. So I think we've already touched on Foles twice. So let's save that till that portion of the discussion later on. So Philly, Dallas, over 56. Moving on to the next play, you like Pittsburgh -1 at home against the Ravens. Pittsburgh's lone victory of the season was last week against the Vikings, but you like them to win again here.
I do. They're home. It's a rivalry. It seems like every year, no matter how good either one of these teams are or how much one of these teams are struggling, whenever they play each other, it's a really hard-fought, grinded-out, tough football kind of game. So I certainly don't see it being a blowout on either side of the ball. But I do think that the fact that Pittsburgh's home and Baltimore really doesn't play well away from their home field, I don't know the fact that I don't think Baltimore's that good. They're 3-3. I don't think they're a 3-3 team. And I don't think Pittsburgh's very good, but they're not a 1-4 team. So I think both teams' records are a little misleading. So basically, if you're going to say these teams are right about even, I'll just take the home field as the tiebreaker, and I think Pittsburgh wins this game.
I think objectively, the thing that swings it for me is that Pittsburgh's favored by 1. I think that's a fishy line, and I think that they want people on the Ravens, speaking of the Vegas line makers, because when you're looking at this, you can see that Pittsburgh was winless going into their bye. Then they faced the Vikings, who, they had Castle starting last week. That whole situation is just in complete disarray, and that was their only win on the season. So looking at that, somebody would say, well, Pittsburgh's obviously an awful team. The Ravens are 3-3, the defending Super Bowl champs. So you would expect that line to be favoring Baltimore by a little bit more. So, like you said, all these division games are grinded out. So normally I would like to be getting points in that situation, with Pittsburgh being, in my opinion, a worse team than Baltimore. But that line is just so fishy that I kind of agree with you that they want people on the Ravens.
And really, I'd like to see the percentages of what the public's on, because I'm actually not sure. I know as much as this year Pittsburgh hasn't looked good for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Them and Dallas are the 2 main public teams.
Correct. So even if they're not good, they're going to have all the fan bases betting on them.
They're going to have their backers, yeah.
And if you look at Ravens, their defense is fine. It's okay. It's not wonderful. Their offense, between injuries and not filling the gaps that were left by people who left last year. It's really weak. I mean, the number 2 receiver is Marlon Brown, who's fine, but a rookie like that shouldn't be a number 2 receiver on the defending Super Bowl champions. I mean, anytime Dallas Clark is getting meaningful playing time, that's a red flag right there too.
Yeah, and the running game, even with Le'Veon Bell being back in the picture, just hasn't been getting anything going. I think the offense.
Well, you're talking about Pittsburgh. I was talking about.
Oh yeah.
I was talking about Baltimore.
I'm sorry.
But I mean, both teams
are in trouble,
right
and Baltimore, they got Jacoby Jones back last week, but he's not a complete receiver. He's just a return guy at heart.
And Dancing with the Stars contestant.
Yes, he does have fancy moves on the dance floor, but I don't know about in the route running capacity.
This is going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be low scoring, I think, 16-13, 20-17, along those lines. But I think Pittsburgh comes away with it.
Okay. Well, moving on to the next one, you like San Francisco -4 at Tennessee. Another kind of fishy line. You would expect the Niners to be a little bit higher favorites against a Tennessee team that's still starting Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. But I guess the Tennessee defense has been playing really well all year, and people expect a close, low-scoring game. What do you see here?
I'm just going to keep betting against Ryan Fitzpatrick until I finally win.
So you're going back to the well. It didn't work out for you with Seattle last week.
But like I said, I think that game last week was a little fluky, and I think that comes into play where it looks like they played a really tough game at a venue that's almost impossible to play. When really, I mean, the defense did a really good job of keeping it close, but they were thoroughly outplayed, and I think they're going to be thoroughly outplayed again by the 49ers.
So you're saying if Seattle wins by that field goal situation never happens, Seattle wins by 17, and Tennessee doesn't cover the spread. You think the spread's a lot higher this week?
I don't know about a lot higher. It's once you get over 3 before you get to 6, it gets a real fishy area when you start going to the 4s and the 5s and the 6s, or 5.5, excuse me, because the games don't usually end in that score. Most of the games end in the 3s and the 6s and the 7s. And then if it goes up to 6 and it goes all the way that high, then people have to start taking a pretty decent defense as a 6-point home dog. So this is one of those, Bill Simmons calls it a Vegas zone kind of game, where you make it too low, everyone's going to pound 49ers. If they made it 6 or higher, everyone probably, or the Sharps at least, would take the Titans at home. So it's at 4 right now. And I mean, my biggest fear is that it is a hard-fought game that comes down to a field goal, but I kind of trust Ryan Fitzpatrick to not keep his team in the game that well. And I do think that better things are coming from San Fran's offense. The running game's been good so far, and I think Kaepernick's not going to be the guy he was last year with Crabtree, but he's going to do better than he's been.
They got Vernon Davis going last week, so that certainly was a sign in the positive direction. And the running game has been working since they reshifted to kind of those jumbo packages and reasserting themselves as the power running team. So I agree that the offense should be able to get just enough points on the board against that tough Tennessee defense, and I don't trust Ryan Fitzpatrick to do too much against the Niners.
Yeah, I mean, we might have to, if this doesn't win, we might have to put the fading the Titans on hold for a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. One fluky situation last week in the Seattle game, but 2 would be a trend. So we'll keep a close eye on that game this week. Moving on to the 4th play for you this week, you like another favorite in Kansas City, -6.5. They're at home against those Houston Texans who just looked like the sky was falling last week for them.
It's a mess in Houston, isn't it? One thing that scares me is if this team bands together because the fans booed Matt Schaub when he got hurt, which was despicable by them.
Yeah,
I'm worried that players get together and rally around that. But
maybe it's an advantage they're on the road this week.
Yeah. If we're just going by sheer talent right now, Houston's a mess. It's not just been Matt Schaub. He's been terrible. But the defense hasn't been good. The special teams had a putrid play last week. And at this point, especially on the road in a place that's really tough to play, which actually broke Seattle's decibel noise world record last week.
Yeah, did you see the screenshot
of
the guy that sent it out? For those of you listening, this scientist recorded the decibel level at Arrowhead last week to send in and show that it was the record-breaking sound level, and he forgot to eliminate his tab bar for his computer on the screenshot, and there were a bunch of different porn websites up there and
multiple anal. He seemed to be an anal guy.
Yeah, He was an anal guy and a sound decibel guy, like two very specific interests. So
it was very funny.
Football fan.
It's one of the funniest pictures you'll ever see. Find it on Twitter. But yeah, it's a harder place to play. Even teams that are better than Kansas City have a hard time going in there and winning. And I just think even if Shaw plays or TJ Yates isn't much better, which by the way, shame on Houston for not having a better backup when your quarterback isn't a superstar. And then they're also talking about maybe Casey Keenum, who...
Yeah, are they hoping Case Keenum is the heir apparent to that position, or are they grooming him for the job?
I don't think so. I think he was drafted to be a backup.
Kind of a flyer. Yeah.
He's in the same boat as Colt Brennan, as guys who were like superstars in college but weren't expected to be much in the NFL other than backups.
So, yeah, we discussed Houston being really awful. KC has looked great, and their defense is the number one defense in the NFL right now. In fantasy terms, they're the 5th overall player. Not even just defense. They're the 5th overall player, which is just unheard of for a defense. They never even finished in the top 30, and they're just scoring defensive touchdowns. They had 10 sacks last week against the Raiders. They put them in a 3rd and 48.
I was going to bring that up too. That was amazing.
Yeah. So the defense, obviously, I trust to hold Houston down. The question is, will J.J. Watt and company step up and show some pride and be able to shut down what's not really a high-powered Kansas City attack? They dink and dunk a lot. They rely a lot on Jamal Charles to do things in the screen game and getting those 20 carries a game. So 6.5 is a little high, but
you got to think of it like this: if every game Houston gives up a pick 6. So with the spread being minus 6.5, I'm actually taking them at plus a half a point.
Okay.
5 weeks in a row.
Will the pick 6 streak continue?
That was hilarious, by the way. The fans cheer that their quarterback gets hurt, so the backup comes in and does the exact same thing.
First drive, TJ Yates throws a pick 6. Be careful what you wish for, Houston fans. You just might get it. So, Kansas City minus 6.5 this week. Moving on to the final play. Team we see a lot each and every week, I believe. Cincinnati, you like them plus 3. They're on the road in Detroit.
Yeah. Well, they don't have to worry about the powerhouse that is Thad Lewis this week, so that's 1+ for them.
Dodge that bullet.
Dodge that bullet. I just think I like to take the 3 points, which is obviously a full field goal score in a game that I think either team could win. Detroit has not been great on offense. Like I said last week, they had 3 scores from an undrafted tight end, who, by the way, he's very good, but I don't think that's going to happen every week. They're also not going to have quarterbacks flipping the ball to them with 4 minutes left every week. And Calvin Johnson is not right. I don't care if he's playing. I don't care if he says he's okay. He's not right, and he's kind of doing what Roddy White was doing the first couple weeks of the year, where he's playing just so someone has to cover him, but I don't think he's the same.
I hope for my fantasy team's sake that's not the case and that he returns at full strength. He did practice today. We're recording this on a Wednesday, and he actually never really practices on Wednesdays, even when he's healthy. It's kind of usually a rest day for him.
But isn't that that's a red flag for me? It's like he's getting extra practice just to test it a little more because he's still not confident he's great.
Or maybe he's just trying to get back to game speed. Like he's been out of action for a couple weeks, more or less. I don't know. Remains to be seen how effective Calvin's going to be.
Either way, you have a quarterback who's very prone to interceptions, throwing against a very, very good secondary.
Yeah, Cincy D, we've talked about it time and again, one of the best defenses in the league. They can certainly cause some turnovers. They got a strong front line led by Geno Atkins, good secondary. So I would expect them to at least stay in the game, and getting 3 points, I agree with you, that's the side to be on in this contest.
Right, and there's these teams, like Cincinnati's one of them, Arizona's another one, where I feel like if they play Jacksonville, it's going to be a 2-possession game, or if they play the best team in the NFL, it's going to be a 1 or 2 possession game. They're not going to get blown out, and they're not going to do a lot of blowing out. So that's why I'm going to be betting against them a lot when they're huge favorites, and betting on them when they're underdogs.
Yeah, the defense was going to keep them in every game just about, and the offense isn't equipped. It's not the Broncos offense where they have all these skill players and a great quarterback that can use them to their maximum benefit. They got 2 good guys, in my opinion, A.J. Green on the outside and Giovanni Bernard coming out of the backfield.
Marvin Jones is coming along, too, as an okay number 2 receiver.
Okay, well, I'm sure he's in a good offense. He could be a really effective weapon, but I don't think Andy Dalton's the kind of guy that's
All
going to bring the most out of him.
All right.
I think A.J. Green and Bernard are just dynamic enough talents that they can overcome Andy Dalton's shortcomings as a playmaker at the quarterback position. So that's the slate for Week 7.
The first game off the board was Arizona. We're talking about the teams that keep every game close. I almost took Arizona. Keep an eye on them tomorrow night. I think that they could pull off an upset straight up.
Yeah, they're at home, correct?
Home
and
against
Seattle struggles a lot on the road.
Even last week, even though I think they should have won that game, their offense is just not. It's not that good. That Percy Harvin not being there is killing them. They really don't have a lot of weapons.
Yeah, Sidney Rice has been dropping a lot of balls outside at receiver. Golden Tate hasn't really stepped up like they expected him to, and the running game's still doing well. But you got to be two-dimensional in today's NFL, and it's a passing league. So they just don't seem to have that aspect of the game down yet where other teams are at this point in the season. So Week 7, to recap, Philadelphia, Dallas over 56, Pittsburgh -1 at home against the Ravens, San Francisco -4 at Tennessee, KC -6.5 at home against Houston, and Cincinnati +3 on the road against the Lions. So normally this is when we would do our Outlet Pass segment where we would take some reader questions. Unfortunately, we didn't get any this week. Be sure to bring them to our attention, and for future podcasts, you can either tweet them at PhillyFastBreak, or you can send us an email at admin@PhillyFastBreak.com, or get in touch with us via Facebook for those of you who know us on that Facebook forum. So instead, we're going to talk a little bit about the Nick Foles, Michael Vick, Eagles quarterback dilemma that is dominating the Philadelphia airwaves right now. Everybody seems to have an opinion on this. Dan, what's yours?
Well, the thing about this particular debate is very fascinating because a lot of times when you have a quarterback controversy, it's when you have like an old guy or a veteran who is called upon and isn't getting the job done, and then a young up-and-comer looks like he's ready to take over. Michael Vick was very, very good in the first 4 games. He struggled against Kansas City. But other than that, he really was statistically a top 5 quarterback.
Eagles have the second best offense in the league right now, so yeah, obviously that hasn't been the problem for them this season.
Now Foles comes in, and he's looked incredible. It's only 2 games against really bad teams, but Tampa's defense, especially on the road, is not bad defense at all. Their problems are more on the other side of the ball. But this transcends just like Vick or Foles. And whether it makes you uncomfortable or not to talk about, which it does for some people, there's a race issue involved. There's a style of quarterback issue involved. There's the Chip Kelly factor. Chip Kelly it's assumed that he needs a mobile quarterback for a system. That's not true, but a lot of people think that. So people think that Nick Foles can't run up-tempo offense because he can't run, even though Chip Kelly kind of did troll everybody with the QB draw, taking away Shady's touchdown for fantasy owners.
Foles had the first touchdown of the game on the ground, just as everyone predicted.
And there's a million ways to look at it. The side that I lean on is because I'm looking for the future of this team and the franchise's identity. I want Nick Foles playing the entire season for the simple fact that this team is not bad enough to get a top 10 pick. And this draft coming up is very, very quarterback heavy. They say there's 6, maybe even 7 guys who might go in the first couple of rounds. But if the Eagles are picking at 16 or 15 or 16, because they're not going to be a terrible team, they're not going to be a 4-12 team like they were last year. If they're picking right around that area, they need to know if they have to take the 5th or 6th ranked quarterback. Because everyone in the first 15 picks is either going to take a quarterback or they're going to trade that pick to a team that needs a quarterback for a couple of future draft picks. So it's not like this. It's not like the Eagles are going to have Teddy Bridgewater or Mariota or maybe even Johnny Football to pick from. They're going to be picking from like the 4, 5, maybe even 6th ranked quarterback. So you have to find out, is Nick Foles a guy? Would you rather go into next year with the 6th ranked quarterback in the draft as your starting quarterback, or would you rather have Nick Foles as your starting quarterback and then pick a beast defender? Because anyone who's watched the Eagles this year knows that's their Achilles heel, and that's putting it very mildly.
It's their Achilles leg.
Yes, it's their Achilles heart, pretty much. And then that's kind of, I'm hoping that Nick Foles can be the guy. I don't think he's going to be a Tom Brady or Peyton Manning kind of quarterback, but I definitely think that he has at least the potential to be a starting guy in this league on a team, especially if you surround him with weapons like Shady McCoy. You saw Deshaun Jackson had a great game with him throwing. You don't know what else is coming at the wide receiver position if you're going to re-sign Macklin or anything. But the offense itself is very good, and I just think you have to see what you have in him. With Vic, whether you win all your games or lose all the games, he's gone.
Yeah, after the season, he is obviously a free agent, and we signed him this year to a qualifying offer. He's making somewhere between $3 and $7 million, depending on his bonuses and incentives that he hits as part of his contract. Here's my take on it, and let me know if you agree with me. Regardless of whether we start Foles or we start Vic, it's really not going to make that much of a difference. Both these guys can direct this Chip Kelly offense, and the defense is going to be pretty bad throughout the season, and it's going to be up to the offense to kind of carry the team. So in my opinion, regardless of who starts, it's only going to make at most like a 1 or 2 game difference. The team's not going to collapse if they put Foles in, and it's not going to win the Super Bowl if Vic's the quarterback. Either way, we're kind of middle of the road, and that's how I see it. Do you agree with that?
I agree with everything you said so far, yes.
Okay. So keeping that in mind, this isn't a Super Bowl caliber team. So even if Vic is slightly more equipped to lead us to a couple more victories this season, I think we're more inclined to see what we have in Foles. And this is because if we have Foles as locked in as a starting quarterback, and we know we can count on him going in the next season, he's only signed for $600,000 through next season and 2015. And we've seen with Seattle with Russell Wilson and San Francisco with Colin Kaepernick, if you have a quarterback who is only signed to a few $100,000 contract, that opens up so much cap space for to use to go out and solidify other portions of your team. You can go out and get a stud pass rusher. You can go out and get that missing piece wide receiver to slot in, like the Niners did with Anquan Boldin. We saw with the Ravens, they had to give Flacco this huge new contract, and partially due to other things, but partially because of that new contract that they gave him, they had to get rid of a lot of pieces, and their team is much worse off as a result.
If Nick Foles wins the Super Bowl like Flacco does, we can I'll be happy with that.
If Nick Foles wins the Super Bowl in 2015, I don't care if we get rid of him. I'll be set for the next 30 years. I'll be happy. But so just see what you have in Nick Foles, and if he's the guy, great. Then best case scenario is we have a quarterback signed for only $600,000. And it frees up so much cap room to go and improve the defense, which is what we really need to improve upon at this point. And then if he falters this year, then we weren't going to win the Super Bowl anyway, and we'll have a slightly better draft pick, and maybe we can take a shot with one of these quarterbacks that are going to go in the middle of the first round, and just go on from there. But see what you have in the kid. That's my opinion.
I agree with your opinion. I think we both gave different points, but our overall view is the same in that it's better for the future of the team. It doesn't matter if Mike Vick might win 1 or 2 more games this year, which I don't even think he will. But even someone who thinks Vick is better than Foles, the difference is not going to be anything special. It's not going to take us past the first round of the playoffs if we win the division at 8-8 somehow, which would actually be bad because then we'd end up with the 22nd pick in the draft. And
yeah. So either way, we're not hoisting the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the year.
So just what's the upside of playing Vick? I don't want to sound like a Vic hater. I wanted Vic gone after last season, and I was bewildered why they brought him back. But he showed up, and since the first snap in the preseason, he has looked incredibly rejuvenated. I really hope that after this season, the team picks him up because he's better than a lot of the guys in the league, and he's really done a good job. He said all the right things. He's never once, even though you know it's killing him that this Foles thing is happening, he's never once given any kind of attitude or anything in the press about it, and he's really handled himself well. This is not like anything like I can't stand Vic. Yes, his red zone troubles are very frustrating, and his tendency to throw picks and fumble the ball in bad situations is very angering. But there's no doubting he's an exciting player. Nick Foles is never going to run for 75 yards when he sees a seam the way Vic is. Nick Foles is never going to flick his wrist and throw the ball 65 yards in the air the way Vic is. But the upside to keeping him is very minimal. And even if he does do the best he could do, which would be an 8-8 record, at the end of the year, you're still stuck with okay, what do we do now with the 15 or 16 pick of the draft?
Nick Foles can run for 75 yards in a season.
In a season.
Don't sell him short. But all right, so it seems like we're both on the same page. At the very least, Foles should be given every opportunity to prove himself this season. Both because we're not going anywhere this year. Eagles, we might win the division, but they're not going to win a Super Bowl. And we need to see what we have in Foles long term, because once you have the quarterback set in this league, all the other pieces fall into place. That's always the first domino that leads to the Super Bowl.
And so many people, a real common response to people who don't want Foles to be the starter say, "Well, he's not the long-term answer, so why play him now?" You know what? Yeah, let him show us that. If he's very mediocre for the rest of the season, then you're right, and he's not the long-term answer. Then we know you move on, and we figure out what to do this offseason. Maybe trade a first and a couple other. Actually, no, I don't want to give away any draft picks. We need to revamp this entire defense.
Yeah.
But at least then you know he's not the guy.
Exactly. So that's our thoughts on the matter. Everybody else in Philadelphia has an opinion. So
by all means, give us your opinions. Let us know what you guys think.
Yep. Share with us via Twitter, Facebook, or via email or comment section on the articles. Let us know what you think. So 5 plays for Week 7. Hopefully another winning slate. We get to have a losing week this season. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Anytime. See you guys next week.
All right. Take care, everyone.